We will now kickstart the event of the panel discussion, which has the title topic of Building a Sustainable and Inclusive Society, the Holistic Approach. The panelists of these discussions will be shortly introduced, but let me please welcome to the stage first Ms. Sony Chan, the moderator of this panel. 咁我哋先咧就有請我哋嘅 moderator 陳明先。And next, the Director of Training of Good Lab, Mr. Kelvin Cheung. CEO of MakeSense Asia, Ms. Lea Klein. Director of MakerBay and Spots, Mr. Cesar Jung Harada. And finally, the President of the Foundation of the French Chamber, Mr. Thierry Neveux. And now let me pass the stage to them.
I'm really happy to join you because as, let's say, multicultural person born in Hong Kong and living in France, in Alsace first and then in Paris, which is not really France to me, I find that today we need more understanding in the society and in the world in general. And today is really awarding to see that even business, even money, even economy can be involved in this process for better understanding in our society. Let's listen to one of our panelists first. Who wants to start? Kelvin? Okay,
All
it's
right.
your turn.
Okay, hi everyone. Hi. Thanks for coming, everyone. I think we've all been given about 5 or 7 minutes to speak, so I'll go first, and then I think we have some panel discussion and things. All right. So I am the CEO. Actually, I'm not the CEO anymore. Somebody much smarter and better than me is now CEO Warren. I have stepped over to Director of Training, so that's what I am. I'm going to talk about innovation through cross-sector collaboration, because for innovation, I believe the main point of my very short presentation is that nothing new and amazing will come if you do things alone. Okay? Or that's basically it. So how do we do this? Okay, so because of traditional, this is design thinking. So hands up if you've heard of this word, design thinking. Okay, so design thinking, really hot topic right now, or been for the past 5 years. Hong Kong in the 1950s, 1960s, it was the simple problems, the traditional problems, right? So that's the age that my father grew up in. All my father wanted was to go to school and have something to eat. You know, we have many charities now, which were back in the day where they were handing out packs of rice because people were not having enough rice. It was simple. Those are the traditional problems. But now things are a little bit more complex. It's not just about do you have enough food to eat? The wicked problems, the very complex problems, are all tied up in a knot. All right. So, for example, I have how many days is my daughter? 16-day-old daughter, okay? And it gets a little bit more complex. It's not do you have enough to eat, right? It's do you do breast milk? Do you do milk powder? Do you do a mix of both? What kind of milk powder it is? Is it allergic? You know, so many different things that are so complex. And if it's milk powder, is it from a sustainable company? Is the milk fair trade? You have just so many questions. And it's a little bit more complicated. And the thing about this is that a lot of times when we try to think about innovation, we use old ways of thinking, all right? So, sorry, Albert Einstein isn't French, but he's a great thinker. He's a great scientist. And what he said is the thinking it took us to get us into this mess is not the same thinking that is going to get us out of it. And that we have to be always at the top of our mind. Is when we think about new things or when we approach problems, do we use an old mindset or a new mindset to do things? And a lot of the time we actually use an old mindset, and when you have an old mindset to do things, you're actually not going to come up with any new ideas, all right? Because I think we're all very super smart in this room. We have very smart people in our companies, but the thing is, using old methods is not going to create new solutions. And what I want to talk about is tri-sector collaboration. This is it's like for people in business. Isn't that just public-private partnership? No. Tri-sector collaboration means that the government, businesses, and civil society are working together equally. So it's not, I see us as a pressure group or a civil society group, I need to push ideas into government, or government has to rule or control things. It's actually a working together on these things. And I will tell you a little bit more about the ideas that we've been doing at the Good Lab to make this possible. In design thinking, we always start off with a good how might we question. And these are just some examples internationally of what is possible when we think about things differently and approach problems differently. So I'm sure many of you are taking care of parents or even your grandpa and grandma, and they have to have a lot of medicine, right? I was in a workshop yesterday and I asked somebody, how much does your parents, how many pieces of medicine do they take in the morning? And she said 6. 6 tablets or whatever, pills. That's when she's not sick. These are just to maintain things in her old age. So far, this is what we use, right? To sort out our medicine. Of course, if any of you have done this, there's a lot of room for error. Some of it is very small, and when you're old, it might drop, and it's under the sofa, and all these things. So, this is actually one of the solutions that was come up with through design thinking. Okay, they took a new way of thinking. I don't have too much time to get into it because I promised 5 minutes, and I think I'm already over. Pill pack, United States. Have a think about it. Basically, it gets delivered by courier to your house, and everything is organized through the mail system. This concept is just basically a pack of all your pills for the morning. But the thing is, this is a very simple thing, right? It's nothing new. But you have to think about how much collaboration did it take to get to this pack. You need the doctors, you need, the health and safety, you need the hospital authority, you need local doctors, you need an online website, you need delivery companies. You have all these things in collaboration. Only then can you get something like this. So any idea, inevitably, that will make an impact will have to have working together. This is one of our projects, not our projects, but one of my director's projects, Ada Wong, who's speaking later at 7 o'clock. The question here was how to make the streets of Sam Shui Po safer. And a lot of times we come up with a lot of very good ideas, but the thing is we forget to bring the right people along to take them on the journey. So it becomes my idea against your idea. So using a process of design thinking, we actually bring different stakeholders together in this project. It's actually half of them are civil servants in the government, half of them are designer, and then you also got local citizens coming together in a very unique group of people to observe the problems, observe the issues, and then come up with ideas together. And actually, one of the ideas that they came up with was a street lighting system for crossing the street, which was on the ground. So they tested it out, and a lot of people liked it. They didn't get any complaints. And this is very important when you come up with new ideas. As you know, you need to come up with a prototype. And they did this in the street for only 3 hours, and the government really liked it. Why? Because nobody got complaints. And when they don't get complaints, that is a very good thing. We do a lot of work with the government, and one of the things they do not like, and nobody likes, is complaints. So this is going to go on and see if they can make this real. This is just a prototype. It's very important when we have ideas, especially in the public space, to prototype things. And this is basically a battery connected to some lights bought from the next street, and then when the green light flashed, they turned that thing on. But the concept worked, and it's going to go to the next level. It's very important to have that participation and bring people together to find out the ideas and test them together. We have some more projects if we have time to talk about it later. So we work mainly, as the Good Lab, we mainly work with government agencies to do innovation. Yes, government and agencies are doing innovation. We partnered with them to do this. This is, anybody live in Seung Soi? Any Seung Soi people here in Wan Chai tonight? No? Okay, they're still in Seung Soi. Okay. This is a sewage treatment plant, and working through a one-year project, we were actually able to bring together the community, the drainage services, and local government to create basically ecological space there that's in the plant again. I'll talk to you a little bit more later about that. And then also another one of our projects, which was really huge collaboration, was actually working with, it was a year-long project again with Wan Chai, LCSD. Has anybody booked squash courts or any kind of sports courts in Hong Kong? Raise your hand. Okay, you know, you have Untitled Chapter. Has anybody used the online system? Okay. Yeah, okay, and what is is it a thumbs up or a thumbs down experience? Oh, you're so generous. Most people, you know, everybody knows this. Okay, it's 20 years old. Okay, yeah. Even the cameraman's given the thumbs down. They're redesigning it. Okay, so we help them redesign things, and we did a lot of workshops with the community to find out what their needs are. So it isn't a bunch of scientists or UX people, professionals. We actually asked the citizens how they would like to book their courts and how they would use it, a human-centric design. So this is not the government waiting for opinions from the society. This is actually working together to make services better. So one of the other points I want to make is it's about working together. It's not one against the other. And we love to be against each other sometimes because there's friction. But I think right now we need less friction and more collaboration. Okay, so these are just some of the projects that we've come up with. This is the work that we do. We're a very small team. We're only about 10 people, but we do, we do a couple projects right now with the government every year. What I would say is that a lot of social innovations are not, it's not about technology. It's not about 5G. It's not about the latest smart technology stuff. Our limitation for innovation is actually a mindset. And that mindset is only when we can reach out the other side, shake their hands, look them in the eyes, sit down, have a coffee together. That's how collaboration and innovation, especially in a social base, that's how it will happen. So that's for me. For some food for thought for now, I will pass it on to the next speaker, which is you, Susan.
I think we can clap. Thank you, very interesting. Can we have like a discount afterwards in the shop or no? You said sure. Okay, now it's your turn.
Thanks a lot.
Cesar.
Yeah, so we need some help. Somebody at the computer, when we get to the slides, I will need you to press on the play buttons on the videos. Okay. Alright. So thanks a lot for coming. So I'll try to stick to the time as well. So I have 3 passions, and they are embodied in 3 projects, or 3 bigger projects I'd like to present to you. My first passion is about the ocean, innovation, and education. So I'll go straight to the project so you can see what I'm talking about. So first, what brought me to Hong Kong is actually this project called Prote. I do ocean robotics. If you can press on the play button, that'd be perfect. Yes, wonderful. And so I used to work in San Francisco, and I was developing a new types of shape-shifting sailing robots. So it's a boat basically that can change shape. And the goal of it is to be more energy efficient and to be more safe. And so I was looking for the best place in the world to manufacture robots. And so, of course, Shenzhen was on the very top. But I found that being based in Hong Kong and manufacturing in Shenzhen was the perfect mix because you have access to the free markets in Hong Kong, knowledge, a great educated population, very safe, and you can manufacture things just across the border. And I was based in San Francisco, and the cost of manufacturing in San Francisco was 7 times more expensive than Shenzhen and 4 times slower. So I moved here in 2013. This boat is exhibited today. If you can see, you can go and see it at K11 until 16th of February. This is a picture from yesterday night. Next slide. Thank you. Okay, the second project I'd like to show to you is not just my research. This is a project in collaboration with a lot of Hong Kong schools, You can go to the yeah. So this is about understanding how the trash travels from Hong Kong. If you throw some garbage in the streets in Hong Kong, how quickly does it go into the sea? And so we work with WWF and we build ocean trackers, basically GPS trackers. We get 11 schools, they build 10 drifters each, and those drifters have a GPS chip inside of them. And so the students actually tracked what they throw in the streets or destroy in the trash, how quickly it goes into the sea. And we've observed that something you throw in the streets of Hong Kong can, by travel by the ocean, can arrive in Taiwan in about 1 month, and the trash from Hong Kong can be in about 2 months in Japan. So Hong Kong trash, or the trash from China, is not a local problem. It's definitely very quickly a global problem. Next one. The next project, this is something we're doing right now. We are building a robot that scans coral reef. So Hong Kong has an amazing biodiversity of coral reefs. Actually, Hong Kong has more than 50, if you can go to the next slide, species of coral reef. And this summer, we are doing a student project. We're building those robots that sail around, that take thousands of pictures of the corals, and we use AI and cloud computing to actually assemble pictures of those coral reefs. We make 2D and 3D maps of the coral reefs, and we can actually help to protect those coral reefs that are projected to die mostly by 2050, about 90%, by 2100, almost 99%. So we're developing a technology with students to map the coral reef. Next slide. So that's my passion for the ocean. The second is passion for innovation. I run and started MakerBay, which is the makerspace in Hong Kong. We have 6 centers, and I will show you a couple of projects we've done. The first is Sapphire Voyager. Next one. So we did a summer program where we were building the first autonomous car for Hong Kong. And so this is our vision for the car of the future. The car of the future doesn't have a front and a back. You don't need keys, you just recognize your face. You get in, there's no seats, no accelerator, no steering wheel, no nothing. And you can just relax and sleep on your way to work or do some more yoga. So this is a vision of, and this has been entirely designed by the students. So students from engineering and design, and so they build this car. Next one. So we also talk about inclusion here, and so we don't want to do only cutting edge technology. We really mean to bring this to everybody in Hong Kong. So thanks to the Jockey Club, we have actually 6 makerspace innovation center in the poorest or really local area. So the things that you have seen are coming from youth center. So we partner with the youth center in Hong Kong. And this is where basically all the ideas come from. They come from those different youth centers. So we have trained about 200 youth workers and about 1,000 young people in the last year. Next one. We also work with even more disadvantaged people, the refugee. We have a refugee program. We have been training quite a few dozen refugees now. There is 13,000 refugees in Hong Kong. They're not allowed to work, not allowed to volunteer. So we are training them, and we're giving them certification and training with new skills, young people and adults, so they can find a job or get a legal permission. In the last 3 years, MakerBay has become more international. We have programs all around the world now. At the end of next month, I'll be representing Asia Innovation at the Harvard conference. We're doing projects in many countries now. Next. And we also work with non-profits, but also for-profit company. So we have a portfolio of projects, but always geared towards social and environmental innovation. Next. And the last one is education. So since August, I direct a new program at the Hong Kong University called Design Plus. You can go to the next one. So if you hear Design Plus, maybe you wonder, what is Design Plus? It's basically design plus impact, or designing plus in emerging technology. So we try to see how we can use all emerging technology to have a social and environmental impact. One example, you think about, next slide. If you think about, for example, the shoes, you used to have to kill animals to make a shoe. Then you have to cut the pieces, you have wasted all the material. Now you can take plastic bottles that are waste, and you can make a shoe from a single thread. So this has environmental impact. You don't need to kill animals anymore. You can reuse material. Next slide. And the next project that we're doing next semester, we're building 3D printers to actually print houses on Mars. It's a very futuristic technology, but the idea is that this kind of technology can also be brought back to Earth. Because if you can print houses on Mars in a very energy and material economic way, then this technology can also be used for Earth. Next slide. So if you're interested to see more about those projects, we're also interested in social environmental, that's what we do, but we're a bit more technology focused, as you're mentioning, Kelvin. So for Ocean, you can see those websites and those other places you want to check more. Thanks a lot.
Hello everybody, I'm Lea. I'm working for an organization that is called MakeSense. So MakeSense is actually an international organization that is actually citizen-led. What does that mean? Basically, our main mission is to engage young people to be part of the solution of how we want the world to be tomorrow. To give you a bit of context, I think it's important to clarify a bit what is climate change, for instance. I think we always see climate change only as having a negative impact on environments, but the reality is actually climate change impacts everything in our life. Most of you, most of us, live in urban areas. Actually, I live in Manila in the Philippines. It's one of the most urban places in the world. And I don't know how is it for you here in Hong Kong, but we have an increase of natural disaster that is very impressive. We have more and more earthquake, we have more and more typhoon, and I don't know how is it for you, but me, it freaks me out every time that I feel the earth shaking. And actually with climate change, it's gonna happen more and more. We see it happening not only in the Philippines, in Hong Kong, but in Australia, in Europe, in the US, everywhere. So it's super important that we need to shape new model of societies. And actually, by 2050, we will the most dense, where the population will live, will be always in cities. So we have to imagine how our cities will be in 20, 30 years, especially that the population is growing. So how people are going to eat, what will be, how are we going to move around the city? What will be our waste management system? What kind of energy system we're going to have in these cities? So we really need to design this new solution. And the reality is our governments don't always know how to do it. And we are still always in the logic of economic growth. Unfortunately, we don't yet analyze the wealth of a country based on other factors. So we're always in the logic of we need to create more jobs, we need companies to be competitive, etc. So there are a lot of constraints linked to this. So the role of citizens is fundamental in shaping new models and showing to our governments that actually it's possible to build a new society. And that's what we do with MakeSense. We support the creation of social innovations that are created by citizens. So we support the creation of social enterprises. And not everybody wants to become a social entrepreneur. That's actually totally normal. But we also build communities of citizens around these social enterprises. Because the reality also of climate change is that we don't have time to wait the development of a startup that will maybe start first in one city, then go in a region, and then in a country. We need to scale fast. And that's how MakeSense is organized today. We build communities of citizens around social enterprises to scale their models. Today, with MakeSense, we mobilize more than 200,000 people in the world with the development of 2,000 social innovation. To give you an example, food waste, it's a big topic right now in France. And we've been working with a lot of social startups that are working on this topic of food waste. What we did is that we've been running campaigns where we train citizens to organize events like this one, or workshops, to see how these citizens can be involved in the development of these social enterprises. And people became so conscious about food waste that we are able to showcase different solutions to the government. And the government now collaborate with these social enterprises. And there is a law that passed recently in France that, for instance, supermarkets are not allowed anymore to throw the food that is still eatable. I don't know if you say it in English like this. But has to be given away to NGOs or other kind of association. That's one example. But the powers of these communities is, of course, to develop solutions on the long term, but also it's amazing to see that actually it helps us also to react very, very fast when like an emergency situation happens. To give you an example, in 2015, I don't know if you remember, but there was a very big earthquake in Nepal. And our community, like the MakeSense volunteers in Singapore, they contacted me and they were like, okay, Lea, we need to do something. Like, the situation over there is unbelievable. Like, we need to support them. So what happened is like, so there was this social enterprise in Singapore that designed very innovative shelters that can be, can be installed very fast, very easily in any kind of places, even in the most remote areas. So what happened is like our volunteers that we call the MakeSense gangsters from Singapore was collaborating with this social enterprise, but this social enterprise was only at that moment in its start and had only one first prototype. So they needed $20,000 to send more shelters to Nepal. So what happened is the MakeSense community in Singapore reached out to the MakeSense community actually here also in Hong Kong, in the Philippines, in Cambodia, in Vietnam, etc., etc. And in 48 hours, they raised $40,000 and they were able to send more than 200 shelters in Nepal. So that's what I want to show, is basically by building these communities of citizens, you have a stronger voice. You're not alone. And that's what MakeSense offer you today. We connect you with the right social enterprise that maybe work on an advocacy that is very important to you. And we train you to entrepreneurship, to innovation, to events planning, so you can also advocate about these solutions. And you can, of course, support the development of this project. I don't know if there are some MakeSense volunteers today in the room. Yay, there is one. But if you want, I can connect you also with the group here. You see, it's amazing what we can do by working together.
My name is Thierry Neveux. I'm here in my capacity as a president of the French Chamber Foundation. So just for the 5 minutes, I'm going to introduce to you who we are and what we do. The French Chamber Foundation was created 5 years ago by the French Chamber of Commerce. The general idea was that the French community in Hong Kong has really grown exponentially in Hong Kong, from like 2,000 when I got here, and now 15 registered and maybe 20,000. So it's really a very large community. And a lot of those French people have been here for a long time, and some of them have been successful. And after a while, they want to give back. They want to give back to the community, and they were trying to find ways, how should I donate, to whom? And there's a reputation of some NGOs that a lot of money is wasted on admin and a lot of things like that. So they wanted to try and do something more direct. So we set up our own foundation, the French Chamber Foundation, and then we set across searching at what would be a good cause and which would be coherent with who we are. Let's call it business people. And very quickly, something came out, is that socially in Hong Kong, there's a huge level of poverty. There's 15–20% of the population living under the poverty level. That's 70% of the median household income. That means for one person that they live under less than 4,000 Hong Kong dollar per month with everything. So it's really minute. And that's a very small amount, but you have 1.5 million people out of 7.5 who live like that. And then after government help, it's still 1 million. And after that, you also have, among that group, 400,000 people who are part of what we call working poor. A working poor is someone who has a full-time job, maybe 2 or more, and who earns less than 4,000 Hong Kong dollar per month. So it's really, it's very, it's hard to stay immobile and try not to do something about it when you're a businessman. You think, wow, there are many companies and we've been very profitable. How can we help them in particular who are working, and through their work they should be able to earn enough to survive in the society, right? So we focused on empowering the working poor and trying to get as many as we can out of poverty. So how to do that? Many of the poor people in Hong Kong do not want to go into a charity, typical donation type of things. There's a kind of stigma attached to it. People here want to work and make it by their own work, which deserves respect, right? So the first thing is, we provide them, that's our first thing, is an affordable meal. For 8 Hong Kong dollars, you can get a decent, balanced meal. And through this, we get people to centers. We have 3 centers in Hong Kong where those people go and they get this affordable meal. They pay for it, so it's not like a charity, but it's a good meal for $8. And this meal is provided to us. We work in association, that's why this is very close to our heart, the fact of being inclusive. We try to include as many NGOs in the work that we do. So the food, for example, comes from Food Angel, which is a very good NGO that's with soup kitchens and places like that, which gathers food and then reuses it for activities like us. And then our centers, we have 3 centers now, are managed by Baptiste Ooi Kwan, which is a social services organization. So we use their services as well. So pretty much we managed to have only 2 people full-time, and last year we were running 40,000 meals, and that's the first thing, the meals. The meals for us is a way to get people in. And then once they're in, we have social workers who assist them into evaluating why they're here, what happened, what's their background, and then we try and find out, what kind of job could we get these people if we train them, something that is feasible for them, and they could get a job which would bring them out of poverty. So we do that then. We do training, and then after we've done that, we try and find them a job through the French Chamber, because of course the French Chamber is very direct, but not only, also through various organizations. But we train them specifically for jobs they can get, and then we help them to do presentation skills, to do all the skills you need to be able to be passing an interview and getting through. And last year, pretty much 135 people ended up out of poverty. It's a very small number, 135, but if it's you, it's a very high number, and it can happen to anyone. There are some people in the centers who used to be general managers and what have you, and merchandisers. Something went wrong, and what was mentioned that the middle class is suffering is very, very true in Hong Kong, and there's a real fear of falling down one level into poverty, and it can happen very fast. So those people, they need to bounce back very fast, and that's what we're trying to do at the French Chamber Foundation.
As a citizen, nowadays we have so much information, and I think we are so much more aware of what is happening, and we want to change the world. But also, talking about changing the society with all the beautiful promises, also comes this danger of just getting part of the marketing thing. And I just wonder, how do you prevent yourself from just being back to the system and promoting just another kind of marketing strategy? And my second question is, today we are lucky enough to think and to talk about a better world, but because we're so privileged and lucky, and in many poor countries, people just want to have what we had before and experience what we already did. Maybe now I do not want to shop that much because I already have my free for Hermes bag, and it was so much fun having sex with my bags. But it was before. But how can I tell somebody not to have sex with the Hermes bag? You know, what gave me the right to tell them not to have sex with the Hermes bag? Okay, so up to you to answer me. Try to convince me.
I'll take the first question, you take the second, okay, Cesar? We live in a system, as far as we're concerned, we're trying to innovate by using the system, because by using the system we can find behind, you have all these human beings with a lot of goodwill actually, who are willing and ready to innovate into different manners, not just giving money, but giving something that they're good at, some ideas that they have. This for me is the best way, is to go using the system and the people around them to innovate and then make the best you can.
If I can maybe, add on your first question, For instance, for the case of like social enterprises, so one of the values of MakeSense is no bullshit, just impacts. And that's something that is very important also for me personally. And for instance, like social enterprises, if we are honest for ourselves, it's a trend right now. It's very cool to become a social entrepreneur, to start a social enterprise, but I hope everybody is conscious that social enterprises are not going to save the world. They can't do it alone. And this is why like the collaboration with like citizens, with like companies or like governments, as you were mentioning earlier, is fundamental, because you need to have like a whole holistic approach and build ecosystems that collaborate together on shifting like toward a new model basically. Like social enterprises alone is just like a kind of version of capitalism today. So we need really to build ecosystem around where like social enterprises are just one stakeholders of the solution, and that's how together we can build like new solutions.
I'm going to try to answer your second question.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Can I get a clarification? Is it the question is it's about materialism?
Well, my second question is, how legitimate can we be to propose a so-called better world when so many less lucky people are working so hard to get what we already had? So how can we be so convinced that we're illegitimate to propose this so-called new better world?
I really hope that people can skip over the world that I've been through and know that the world that I have been through is actually a dead end. And that they can, like mobile technology in Africa, right? A lot of it in Africa, they don't have landlines. They just skip over all of that and do 4G, 3G. They don't need to lay the landlines. We don't need to go over there. So skip over what I call, like, what we have is materialism here in Hong Kong. So, you know, I have had cars. I have 4 bicycles. I like cycling. I have 4 bicycles. Buying one more bicycle does not make me more happy. It makes me happy for about 1 week. But then it just, like, you know, you have your Hermes bags. I've got my bicycles. I actually have more bicycles.
Sorry, it's Hermes.
Hermes.
Repeat after me.
Sorry.
Hermes.
Hermes. Okay, so I think for me is that what I learned in like the past 16, 18 years is that those things are not going to bring me everlasting happiness. It's not going to sustain my happiness. It's not going to sustain my purpose. And what I do now is through my church and also through the things I do at the Good Lab is helping other people. And what I want people to know is that it doesn't matter which social economic group you have. All of us, well, most of us will have 2 hands and we'll have some time. And by using those 2 hands and that little bit of time to help others, you get something that can never be bought, which is helping somebody else. And I think, you know, that's a very, I'm trying to like off the cuff answer that question, but that's I think what true happiness is by spending your time helping others. And that doesn't need to come from anything you buy.
But is it also part of the process to go through all these mistakes? It's difficult to tell somebody not to do the same thing as what I did. You know, I think that's how it is embarrassing sometimes for me to say, what is a better world or what is the better system?
If I may, I think like we can see now a lot of young people in the streets, you know, like protesting for, say, the climate march. And I think most of them don't aspire to a Hermes bag actually. And for me, they are super inspiring because they, without having to have made that mistake, they see that we have made that mistake. And it's good enough for them to understand, okay, I don't want this Hermes bag because that's the reason why we have these problems. And so I think
let's not say Hermes anymore. We still need sponsor for next year.
But what I mean is that the value of a lot of young people now have shifted already. And they are not interested in being rich necessarily or the appearance of being rich.
Have you been to China?
Yeah, and even in China. And there's people who are less interested in the success or even in happiness, but more and more people are interested in having purpose. I'm not saying this is a majority, but I say that it's definitely shifting. And what I feel we need to do is to listen to them and support them.
My first question was mostly for you because I saw one of your photos, this huge Nike sneakers. So I want to be a smart citizen and know that what you're talking about is not just part of a new marketing, strategy from any brand.
I don't think if you use marketing for the right cause, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think you want to use the best tools that you can have to make a change. And now most of the money in that case goes to a very large corporation that could have abusive practices, and that's bad. But it also opens a way and creates a trend for a lot of other companies to adopt same practices, and they will do it better, probably.
Because I find it really lovely when H&M had this new line with like organic cotton, but when I look at things closer, I realize that they do not pay the factory more. So it's really, I think it's really tricky.
Yes, but essentially we live in this capitalist system and we have no better. We tried other ones and they don't work more. So we have to use the tools at our disposal, and I fully agree with you that the young people actually are very aware, much more aware than we were in our generation. They have climate change, there's a big monster coming right now, they have no choice, they must do something about it, and they're desperate that we're not, so to speak. So you let them, you provide them with the means to develop, you empower them to give them and to make those tools, they will. But you really have to do that with whatever is offered to you. And that means tools, that means money as well. You need to build fundraising towards that goal of sustainability and inclusive society. If nobody pays for it, nothing will happen. So you really need to be very proactive. There are some NGOs that exist, have fantastic founders, but they don't know anything about running a company and they go bankrupt. And then they stop and then they don't do the good things that they should be doing. So you have to be good at it and you have to look at it from a standpoint of efficiency and using marketing tools and financial tools, even being very innovative, for example, in the fundraising. Us, for example, we're targeting poverty. I tell you one thing, poverty is not sexy. There's no company that puts as a CSR, we will reduce poverty. Because it's very hard on an annual report to say, okay, we're making these many billions and then we will reduce poverty, and you make a small picture. It's not marketable. So no CSR of company includes that. They include more marketing usable, noble causes, youth, education, and so forth, which are all very good, by the way. So for us, we need to be thinking out of the box and using things which have nothing to do with poverty to generate the operations that we do, and then do the things we do and try and solve a little bit poverty. So you really have to innovate in every field, in the running of what you do, and in the fundraising to finance and grow the good things that you're trying to do.
I have another question for you. I guess you know Asia and the Western world very well. I think that the approach that we have is very related to our culture. I have a very simple example. I think just having, for example, elderly home, elderly center in the middle of the city, as the case we have in Hong Kong, because we do not have other choice, we don't have any more space, is so much more smart than a lot of the elderly homes I see in France, where you have old people totally isolated out of the center. So I think culture plays a big part in our approach. Can you share anything related to culture or anything that is very specific to the Asian culture so that we might be more aware of our quality?
I can give you an example of a situation that we face till now actually in the Philippines. So it's actually one of the favorite projects, one of my favorite projects we're working on right now. So it's a young lady who started a social enterprise that is called Sinaya Cup. I don't know if you are familiar with what is a menstrual cup. Menstrual cup.
Nice.
So basically, like I'm sure you're aware of like hygienic pads, tampons, and now you have like alternative tools that first of all are healthier for women's body, but also are better for the environment because hygienic pads create so much waste. And for instance, in the Philippines, most of the time, like women, we just like throw them in the landfill. So it's also very risky in terms of disease, but also like because a lot of women over there are very poor, it's very not hygienic. Like I will avoid you the details, but they will reuse like ones they already used before, etc., etc. So menstrual cup actually has a huge potential for countries like the Philippines. But we are in a country where talking about this type of things is a big taboo. So this social enterprise, what they do is they have this model that is called buy one, teach one model. So basically, like for instance, me when I buy a menstrual cup, it funds the 3-month educational program of a public high school girl about menstrual health and reproductive health. But to find high school who will partner with Sinaya Cup to educate women about menstrual health, it wasn't easy. It really wasn't easy, and even like big NGOs that we know very well in the Philippines, that are very open-minded, when we were sending email about this, we had like no answers. We organized an event also, for instance, with the Rotary Club to like engage them with some of our social enterprises. 80% of the room were full of men. I can tell you, like when she started saying the word vagina 3 times, half of the people in the room left. And it was very hard, and for me that's where a moment really, it was one of the first time that I was really observing such culture difference, because for me, like I wasn't shocked to talk about these things. Even some young ladies, I saw them like doing like this during the presentations. And I think the fact that at that moment I was French was very important for Audrey, like this entrepreneur, because I was supporting her the whole time. And for instance, for her fundraising, what we started to do is to not look for investors in the Philippines, but we started to look for investors in Europe, in the US, etc. And so that was super important to make sure that we can continue the development of this program. Thankfully, there are actually amazing director of public high school who accepted to collaborate with us also. So now we are working with 5 public high schools. And what is also important to know is like the clients of Sinaya Cup in the Philippines are fundamental, because now we train the clients of Sinaya Cup to go also in disadvantaged communities to run such activities, and we also involve the mothers so they can be more conscious about these things. So that moment, I felt like agricultural differences was super important to develop this project.
Well, I think you cannot change a culture quickly. If you try, it's like a salmon swimming against the current. It's just too hard. You're wasting your time. But what you can do is you take the people who are in acceptance of what you're trying to get and to achieve. With this, in a very small number, you achieve something, just like you when you started MakerBot. You just start really small and you make it happen with good-willing people like you and who are thinking alike. Once you do this, then you make it known, you communicate about it, and if actually what you are doing is good, is successful, it's really working and it's very good, progressively people will come to it. You can't change a culture, but definitely you can make it evolve by what you're doing and then communicating about it. It takes a lot of time. Yes, but so what? If at the end of that, the exercise in 8 years, what you have done is not one MakerBot, but it's all over the world, so be it. It's great. Just take your time and do what you think is right and make it in a way which can grow and last. But don't try and change it super fast, because that usually doesn't.
But I think it can change super fast now because we have social media. You know, each one of us are evangelists for a cause, and the one that I think culture is hard to change. But whatever practice it is, you can have an alternative. So for your example, menstrual has like M. Okay, so it's a cup instead. So it's an alternative. For us, for me, or at least my generation, I'm 36 now, but anybody lower than 36, I'm pretty sure, will not eat shark fin. All right, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, people eat shark fin. and my brother just leaves it on the table, and I'm somewhere in the middle, like 冇晒啦, and應該喺度咯. So because my values, I don't want to waste things. So that's like two of my values there. So it can change very quickly, and because we have the social media, and sometimes even in social media we shame companies, right? It's that like company shaming. Things can change very, very quickly, as we see, especially in China. One thing wrong, that whole population will stop buying that product. It can change very quickly.
How technology, socialism, and humanity can be connected and make it well balanced.
So it's a little bit connected to the previous question. So actually I was based in San Francisco, where you think you have all the technology and funds and all the VCs. And there was a VC that actually invested in my company. And just a few months after, which was an impossible timeline, he dropped us basically. And I had to lay off all my staff, and I was homeless for like 6 months. And so I experienced firsthand the greed of venture capitalism and the recklessness of investors, and how it devastates families and businesses. And this is why I kind of converted to social enterprise. And I agree with you, there's still a lot of things that are lacking in social enterprise. What I see, although I also admire the efficiency or the scale at which the fund SoftBank operates, I also disagree on a lot of the metrics that they use. I think if you are speculating on companies like WeWork, and the huge kind of, there needs to, it's, for me it seems that they are betting money on something that is too speculative and not anchored enough in reality. In the last few days we have BlackRock, this kind of investment fund, are starting to change the strategy. They haven't really fully committed, but we start to see at the top changes that we have been needing for decades. So I admire what they do, but I really hope that they also have a cultural change within those spheres, and yeah.
Hello, my name is Christelle, coming from Belgium, not from France. My question is, I saw your beautiful house for Mars, but my question is, because I come quite a lot here in Hong Kong, and I know the people has a lot of problems to live in Hong Kong because it's not enough space and very expensive. And my question is it possible to find a solution for them to live better here in Hong Kong instead to find a solution to live on Mars?
Yes, so if you think that living in Hong Kong is expensive,
Yes.
Living on Mars is a lot more expensive.
For the housing solution, it is a solution that is it's called Lightbeat, Guangfong. Some of the local people might have heard about it. It's because there's actually a lot of empty flats in Hong Kong by people who have moved to perhaps France or Canada, but they have kept an investment flat or something like that. It's very weird, the local Hong Kong people understand this. They will rather leave their flat empty than rent it out because they don't know the renter and things like that. So a management company called Lightbeat, I think has been going on for about 10 years now. Basically, through the credibility, these high net worth individuals actually give their houses into their portfolio, and I think they have over 200 houses, or sorry, we don't have houses here, apartments, but they actually got government buildings, one in Samzang. So it's not a total solution, but there's no total solution, all right? There's no total solution. There's just better, getting better, and that's just one example. You can check it out.
So, for example, the social enterprise that you just mentioned about affordable housing, we also work with them. So we build like a makerspace in their basement, because once the building is built, there's a lot of maintenance work to do. And the people who cannot afford a house rarely can afford as well to fix the tap. So we actually brought the tools in there so the residents can actually repair their home. So we don't only build the house on Mars and all this future stuff. We do really, really basic work. We also build shelters for the homeless. We work with the garbage collectors to build better trolleys. So it's not you have to make it research against like grassroots work. It can be connected, and in our practice it is connected.
Okay, greed is at the basis of capitalism, right? It's a human individual thing, right? I want to make more so I can give to my children and so forth, right? So the way is that you present a project to them which not only does good, but also they're not going to lose money in the process. In some way, some strange way sometimes, they're going to be making money in the process. I'll give you an example. There's something called RAC, the social responsibilities of companies. Many companies, they don't do social activities just because they like it. They do it because they have to. And they have to because by looking better, their brand, their company will look better. So we must take this one level more and bring it one level higher to the top managements of companies, to those human beings, so that it's not just something I do to look good, but it's something I do so that really the culture of my company, be it a very small company or a very large company, becomes really looking better, because then you will attract better employees who will be working more and longer hours and OT for you because they will be doing it for a good cause. Google used to be like this. They were saying, don't be evil. They used to be like this, and they got people to work 80 hours a week without OT because they were thinking they were going to do good, right? So if you do that, actually, you can achieve a lot of great things. You just need to carry on and make it a much wider thing than it is today.
Well, I think time's up. Thank you very much for 4 panelists. Thank you. And La vie des ciné c'est pas fini is not over yet, and you're welcome to stay with us. See you later. Thank you.